Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with Season 1, Episode 20, The Alchemist Returns. It's Varian, hey! 50% chance he does actually show up. Okay. Let's walk through this one, shall we? So the first thing we see is her confronting the king. You lied to me. And his response is, I was just trying to protect you, and I'm secretly evil. And she says, she confronts him, and finally he actually says, you're not ready for the truth, which, by the way, is the exact same tactic that Kieran took earlier with Varian, and I am the king. I have the situation under control, which is also the same tactic Kieran took. Just stonewalling and saying the equivalent of, that's an order. She then directly compares him to Mother Gothel. I wonder if he even knows the significance of that statement. And as usual, this kind of tactic does not work. Yeah. Is he brain dead? I'm sorry. I'm trying really hard to be understanding about Frederick. It's just, he's so terrible. he's so bad. So then we see that we have a truth serum thing going on. Okay. I should mention that this is way before they actually reveal that. It's just extremely obvious from the word go that there's some kind of truth serum going on. I've seen fiction before, right? I know how this works. So then we have her dream. Everyone's dancing. She's making up with her dad because, oh, that's great. But then the spikes kill everyone. And then Varian's like, you must face your destiny. Don't spoil this. But please tell me that this isn't going to go into destiny and fate and all that garbledy-gook. God, I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of it in fiction. We are fated. Moving on. I finally figured out why Rapunzel doesn't sleep in the same room as Eugene, though. It's the hair. So she goes out. She's trying to figure out what's going on. Oh my god, it's Varian. Notice he does not hug her back. And then he pulls out the thing, and we see the sun dropping down onto the sundrop flower, and the moon dropping down onto the spikes. So, okay, that all tracks. I'm with it. Now, there's a point that Varian brings up that never really processed with me before. In the film, they pluck the flower, and they use its power to brew it to brew a tea to heal her. Okay, cool. All that's cool. What did they do with the flower afterwards? I sort of automatically presumed that the flower was destroyed because I've made tea before, and I know that tea is mostly just crushed up, flower stuff. So crush, make tea, cool. But it occurred to me in the middle of this scene that actually there's other ways to make tea too, and they might have just had the flower sit in the thing and brew it and then kept the husk. I have to admit, my first thought was, why would they keep the husk? But here we are. So we must find the husk. Okay, cool. So we have a bit of continuity. The underground tunnels come back, and the journal comes back. It is also the same painting of her dad, the really, really dour one. Why is she so freaked out about the idea of committing treason here? I know this sounds weird, but it's the worst part of the episode, and it's a recurring character beat for Rapunzel the entire episode. And I've been trying to put together why it bothers me so much. And I think it's because it's bad writing. Let me explain that. Sorry, I know that's a hell of an umbrella category. I think it's because they're specifically trying to do foreshadowing for the fact that Varian is pure evil without actually earning that. And they're trying to make it so that she's like they're trying to play up the drama here, essentially. They're trying to do something that probably looks like clever foreshadowing and super isn't, and they're trying to make it it's just strange. It's in so many odd directions. And she keeps specifically using the word treason too, which, as several people in chat just pointed out, that's not something that really affects her. I mean, first of all, the king is not going to execute his daughter, Jesus Christ. We know he's a bit draconian, but come on. It's not like he's going to lock her in a tower like Mother Gothel did, okay? There's no way. So, obviously, she's not really, like there will probably be some consequences if they just, if this is over. We've already seen him assign extra guards to her twice, by the way. So that would make, that would be unpleasant, but that's it. And she's not only in her rebellious teenage phase for good reason, but he's been actively going on his way to be a terrible father recently, multiple times. Again, the lying and the fact that my nose is itching, the lying and the refusal to admit to face her, and just not knuckling down on being a bad father. Like, you cannot tell me that she's super adherent here. May I ask why, Loner? And how many negatives we're going to give that? Now, you could argue this, like, we could argue around this point, but the problem is the entire treason point doesn't work all the way up to the second to last scene, because they keep hitting the same beat. Let's move on. So, treason! So, hold up. We have a chameleon, a horse, an owl, and a raccoon. Is this the highest density of Disney mascots we've ever had before? Random thoughts. And yeah, is it really treason if you're helping? I mean, treason can be defined differently, because sometimes treason is defined as going against the state, and sometimes it's defined as going against the head of state. And those are very different things, so we can debate this. But again, that's his daughter. There's no way. I'm sorry. Even I wouldn't believe that Frederick is willing to go that far, because my whole idea about him being the antagonist, I was about to say something really unkind. That's what I would expect from a better show, is what I was going to say. It would be an interesting and engaging direction to take the story, and a way to kind of twist things on its head. It would make Frederick an interesting counterpart to Mother Gothel, whereas Mother Gothel was a horrifically evil woman who was only using and abusing her for her own benefits. It would make him a kind and more benevolent antagonist who is so afraid of this happening again that it pushes him to these kind of extremes, right? It would be a character contrast. It would be a thematic contrast. It would be a fantastic way to take the plot. It would be a perfect way to move the show outside the boundaries of Corona. It would be a good way to tie in other Disney properties if they wanted to do cross-merchandising. There's way too many ways, creatively and financially, that it would make perfect sense. Yeah, exactly. It turns him into a monster unintentionally, unlike Mother Gothel, who was just a horrible human being. And we could see, like I said, there's a lot they could do with that. And they're not going to. None of everything I was speculating on, none of that's going to happen. Yeah, that's another thing. That flower has been fine and desiccated. I mean, I guess actually dried flowers last a long time, so that's whatever. Anyways, sorry. Yeah, it's also a magic flower, so that's there too. Yeah, exactly, Bionic Punk. Interesting, Loner. I'll look into it. When we get there, I'll look into it. You haven't answered my other question, which is how many negatives that would be. Yeah, kids show. You know, I have railed against the cartoons are for kids things for most of my life at this point. But I think the single biggest thing that pisses me off about the kids show angle is the actual network executives who mandate it. Because you could argue that the audience is part of that. You could argue that the creators are part of that. But at the end of the day, the reason several of these shows, including My Little Pony, a show I praise excessively, tend to fall flat of what they could have done is because some dude in a suit somewhere said, well, hang on, you think the kids are going to get that? And most of the time when these shows manage to push past that boundary, it's because of circumstance or coincidence. Anyways. Sorry, just food for thought. Yeah, Season 1 MLP had more or less the same problem. Yeah. I apologize. Let's move on. Let's move on. Okay, so they're going through the tunnels. They're going through the tunnels. The tunnels, all the booby traps still work. I found that funny because, like, abandoned tunnels are really, really dangerous regardless of booby traps. That's true in real life. You find some abandoned tunnels, don't go in there. You could die or worse. I'm just saying. No. But yeah, walk away from that. Let's just move back here. I mean, I suppose that's true, Blade Travel. I admit I just kind of can't agree with you on that. I know that's strange, but let's stop going down that rabbit hole. Let's just admit that this show isn't as good as it should be and move on, because that's the reality. That's just where we're at. So, where the hell was I? Traps, right? Why is it every time there's walls that are going to crush you, the first thing the characters do is they rush for the walls to try and push them back? You ever notice that? Like every single time. That was even in A New Hope. Do you remember that? Anyways, so this is when they flat out admit that the truth serum is so much like the mood potion. I hate to keep complaining about this episode, but that's not a good line. There's no real logical connection between the mood potion and the truth serum. It's just they're both potions. The only reason they call attention to that is in case the audience has forgotten about that connection, which was just a couple episodes, I remind you. Right, like it's okay. Moving on. So then we have Cassandra being bad cop and Eugene being good cop. I do like that. And we cut to Varian mentioning that they have their hands full, getting across the idea. I do want to mention the animation, as usual, continues to be excellent. A lot of color coding too. I've mentioned so many times the color usage in this show is so good. There's a very, very minor thing where Varian has this staff, and it's got like a green vial and a purple vial, and as he's walking over the tripwire, it kind of shifts from gray to green to purple to gray as he's walking over it. Really nice little touch I wanted to call attention to. There's actually a lot like that in this episode. They do some cool stuff with the lighting while they're down in the tunnels. And, of course, we see that the automaton is green-coated, which almost assuredly means Demanitus device. So that's cool. We then cut back to Cassandra and Eugene working together, which... can we have more of that, by the way? Useless? I gave you my recipe for strawberry scones. That was the most useless part. That actually got a laugh out of me. I'll give you that one. But then, how did, like, everybody eat these cookies except for Eugene and Cassandra? Like, did he just go around offering cookies to, like, everybody and everybody took it? Like, everybody? Oh, yeah, there's also the attacked Rapunzel thing. I caught that, which is another... Huh? And again, is that retconning? Or is that, like, rampant misinformation being spread throughout the town? Because... Anyways. So then the episode finally starts to lose me. Yeah, Cassandra would refuse a free cookie. And Eugene... Anyways... The confrontation scene, it's actually the reveal scene. It's where Varian reveals his villainy to Rapunzel. And it's hard for me to properly process how much it doesn't work. It's trying entirely too hard, thinks it's cleverer than it is, and is very, very forced. All of Rapunzel's thrust here is about how she's freaking out about how she is committed treason. Which, as we've already discussed, is nonsense. This is the third of 4 times she hits that button throughout the course of this episode. Or maybe it's 2 of 3. Hang on, 1, 2. No, this is 3 or 4. I'm right. Yeah, I wasn't going to mention the other variant. And every argument he makes actually makes a weird amount of sense. I know that sounds stupid, but his overall point is, I'm concerned about my dad. I mean, sure, the kingdom, sure, but I'm worried about my dad. Which makes sense. you tend to worry about the individual thing before you worry about the macroscopic thing, right? Microscopic. You get it. We've talked about this concept before. And especially a 14-year-old kid, I'm going to keep reminding people of that, would probably be a little bit more focused on his dad, especially since she's seen him at this point. She knows what's going on with that. Then we get into the idea that he mentions, who cares if we steal this stupid thing? It's just sitting here in the vault rotting anyways, which is valid. It's also something they're doing to try and help people, which is valid. Yeah, exactly, Lord Harriman. And then he also flat out says, I know first, and you know, she's like, no, let's just put it back and we'll figure a way to do this. I promise. And you can feel her starting to reach out to him, but the problem is she's already promised to him. And he's right. I've seen how well you keep your promises, which is not at all. She has no valid argument here other than, I got a bad feeling. And he has every valid argument here. What is the construction of this scene? Yeah, didn't even go to check on him for weeks, by the way. And then, as if this wasn't pissing me off enough, then we get to a bit where she talks about how, you know, hey, I committed treason. That's 4 out of 4 now. And Marion, I don't even know what he is anymore. As if he's like leapt off the ledge of villainy. As if he's some horrible monster now for lying to her about nothing. He didn't actually lie to her at all. No, really. All he said was, I mean, everything he said, the only thing that he deceived her about, let's not actually go down that line. The only thing he deceived her about was he was the one who gave them the truth cookies. That's it. That's all. Otherwise, I want to go get this thing for the sake of helping my father. Please help me get this. All of that was 100%. And he was very open and honest about his goals, what he was going to use them for, and why he thought it would work. From word go. So she's all like, he deceived me, which he didn't, really. He was going to steal an artifact which wasn't doing anything, as previously mentioned, in order to help save someone's life, by the way. Let's see, what else? He gave truth cookies to the kingdom, which is not what I would call a particularly villainous act. Like, that's... I don't even know where to call that, you know? Yeah, like, this is just such a weird thing. Yeah, it's we have literally seen worse pranks than that in this show. Accidental pranks, but still. So, like... What? And so she's acting like he's turned into this monster. And I've been debating when I should talk about this. Because the thing is, I know a little bit of a behind-the-scenes thing about this show. I didn't actually have context for it until I started watching the show. So it was very much in a vacuum. But as I continue to watch this show... we'll see, Loner. We'll see. Here's the deal. There's this guy you may have heard of. Let's just go into it. Let's just dive right into it right here, right now, because I've been sitting on this for a minute. There's this guy named Chris Sonnenberg, not to be related to Chuck Sonnenberg, completely different guy. Points if you get the reference. He's the main producer of this show, and someone who rather infamously should probably never be on camera or dealing with fans ever. This is something I've talked about before. Not everyone has stage presence. Not everyone should be on camera, right? So I'm trying to find... I actually have some notes about this. But unfortunately, I seem to have accidentally closed them, which is really weird. So you're going to have to give me a moment to re-find this. I apologize for the delay. Here it is. Okay. Apologies for the delay. So, as the show... So, I knew very little tidbits about this without having context. I didn't even know about the show Tangled existing when this was happening. So this was back in 2017, 2018. And there was a producer, a Disney producer, who was not doing a very good job of adhering to his fans and dealing with them and having bad reactions to people's reaction to his show and blah, blah, blah. And it actually mostly entered my field of consciousness because it was being related to MLP and how they dealt with their fandom at the time. Okay, so that's the opening vector here. That just kind of sat in the back of my mind for a while. When this show was added, I decided to do a very small amount of research, trying to figure out some more specifics, and came up with the name Chris Sonnenberg, and put a pin in that and just kind of let that sit until about a week ago, when I decided to do substantially more looking into this. And actually, yes, that's exactly right. So here's the deal. Tangled series, good show. Lots of people liked it. But a lot of people specifically like two characters in this show. Those characters are Cassandra and Varian. That makes sense. They're pretty good characters. Right? Like, we like Varian, we like Cassandra. Cool, I'm with both things. But then, he started getting weird. Because Chris, who is the producer and mainliner for the show, by the way, didn't like Varian. And started to get irritable at the fans who did like Varian. And yeah, I'm starting to explain the asshole quota here, aren't I? Because Varian, by all accounts that we know, and this is, I haven't done a true deep dive on this because I'm trying to avoid spoilers, but from what we know, Varian was supposed to be a one and done, kind of an intro villain kind of a thing, and that's it. Nobody was really supposed to be like, oh my gosh, this character's awesome. So while there was some buildup and there was some things, the lineup was that Varian was supposed to be the bad guy, and they were going to do some stuff with him in Season 2. And you'll notice the way I'm phrasing that. Now, I don't know if Varian's in Season 2 in the final product, but I know that in the original draft, he was supposed to be a major recurring background element for Season 2. And for those of you who've seen this show, and if you're nodding with me right around now, then I'm right. Because they weren't really having any idea. They pulled back on him because he really hated the fact that everyone liked Varian. And he kept getting frustrated about this. Everything came to a head during this one tidbit. Now, Chris Sonnenberg was interesting in that he directly went out of his way to regularly interact with fans of the show, which was actually unusual even at this point in history. This is like 2017, 2018 at this point. And so he would literally do a thing where he would pop into Discord and they would stream the show. They would stream an episode on Discord and he would be there for commentary and discussion during the thing. That's kind of cool, actually. It's a shame he's such a dickwad about it because he couldn't stop being passive-aggressive about it, and eventually finally got to this point where one of the viewers said Rapunzel was meant to be the focus of the show, and Varian was only there to serve her arc. Chris's response was, you, the real fans, are who this show is for. Now, there's a lot of receipts about this. And there's a lot of evidence that boils down to the idea that this is not an isolated incident, that this was more like the final straw. Yeah, no kidding, Ross. Hey, I swear I'm building up to a point here, though, because it was what he was saying and what he had been saying was that anybody who liked Varian were not real fans of the show, that they didn't have a right to watch the show. In response, the Discord mods of the Tangled Discord banned the producer of the show from that Discord. Now, how did he take it? Well, Varian was supposed to be a major character in Season 2. So, the reason I'm bringing all of this up is... The only thing I know is that Varian's not in Season 2. And the one other thing for Season 3, which we'll get to later. I guess I can just tell you now. So Varian apparently shows up in Season 3 and is very much... okay, here, fine. No real follow-through, no curve, no story arc, just, okay, fine, here's Varian. In what can only be referred to as a here kind of a thing. I'm also going to point out something else when we get there. I don't want to talk about that yet, but all I'm going to say is there's another character that was hit with this particular brush as we go through it. I know, right, Lunarith? Imagine being Jordan... Oh, God, I forgot his name. The guy who plays Varian. Being told, you know, now that he's made his big break into a major television production as one of the main characters, being told, yeah, by the way, we won't need you next year. What? Jeremy Jordan, thank you. Jeremy Jordan is the direction there. There's other stuff, but the long and the short of it is that Mr. Sonnenberg is kind of not a great person, is the nicest way I could possibly... He's very Maurice Hurley. He's very Maurice Hurley. And it's very clear and obvious that, unfortunately, because unlike Maurice Hurley, Sonnenberg had total control of the situation. And that's the problem. I've said so many times, imagine a Trek, imagine a Star Trek The Next Generation that was under Maurice Hurley instead of Rick Berman. And I guarantee you that would have been a worse show. And what we're looking at is a show that should have been much better, and wasn't, because of Chris Sonnenberg. Let's drag that all the way back to this episode. Let's bring this back on point here. Because, who's Maurice Hurley? Don't worry about it. Yeah, he's the asshole. He's the asshole! He is the asshole. And, if we drag this all the way back to the episode, the fact that the episode is trying so hard to make you not like Varian, is trying so hard to convince you that he's evil without any actual evidence or backing for that whatsoever. And the way that Rapunzel is just acting weird around him. You get this, right? You get how you can just kind of feel that the vibe is happening. And yeah, it had the exact opposite effect. I am so much more sympathetic towards Varian now than I was earlier. And Rapunzel just randomly takes the idiot ball for no perceived reason other than the usual reason you take the idiot ball. And that's a damn shame. And I do absolutely think it drags the episode down. Because this should be the two towers, right? This should be the strong connective thread that follows through on the buildup and then leads to the payoff. But instead, it's just kind of here. This whole episode feels twisted, for lack of a better way to put it. And I was actually thinking about structure, you know me. And if you piece out the pieces of the episode and reconstruct them a little bit, it would make a lot more sense if Varian was supposed to be more sympathetic here, and he was actually betrayed by someone else here, rather than this last-ditch effort that she makes to turn on him. Like, imagine if someone else rushes in, and that's the thing. Like, maybe just imagine for a moment the scene at the flower, and he has started to convince Rapunzel of his side of things, and he thinks maybe he was wrong about Rapunzel, and maybe he can reach out to her, and that's when Frederick shows up, or Eugene or Cass, but it doesn't matter. One of them show up, possibly including the king, and that's the betrayal. Not of Rapunzel, but of Varian. And now he realizes, oh, I can't trust anybody. And this is actually the final straw for him, and pushes him over the end. And Rapunzel at the end isn't worried about, I don't know what evil, horrible thing he is. Instead, she's worried for her friend, and she's not sure what's going to become of him because of this incident. And you see how the bones of that thing I just said are actually there in the episode. This isn't me just fan-wanking here. The scene construction follows neatly from what I just described. Change around a few lines and a few bits of dialogue, and it fits perfectly. Food for thought. Unfortunately, that's not what we got. Instead, what we get is Varian is evil. Puppies. There's still some decent stuff here. But honestly, at most, I would say yellow is the ceiling here. It's got some problems. What are we thinking? What are we thinking? I also have to admit, I'm actually angry at Chris Sonneberg here. And I want to stress that because this is a show I just started watching like 2 days ago, 3 days ago now, excuse me. And I'm already angry at this man for ruining what should have been a truly amazing show. Don't mistake me, this has been a damn good show. Yellows, yellows, oranges, yellows. But this show should have been better than it is. The bones of this being a better show are right there on display, right? And again, we have receipts that this man personally made this show worse because he was a twit. Yeah, he dragged the show down from what should have been a red show down to orange or yellow, right? And that's pretty on him. Yeah, Eugene's turned around. Cassandra's awesome. Varian's interesting. They've even got a character arc for Frederick, which they haven't followed through on. Rapunzel's fantastic. I love most of the mascots. The animation is crazy good. Anyways. You mean a smaller role, Bionic? Yeah, yellow. Let's give this a yellow. We are very, very close to the whole season being yellow. Right now, so if somehow magically Secrets of the Sun Drop, which by the way is a double parter, so we're going to be 40 more minutes, then this whole season is green, but it's right on the upper edge of green. So what that means is as long as the next episode is at least yellow, in fact, let's just do that. Yep. The whole season will drift up into yellow from green. And that sounds about right. So, like I said, this is a two-parter. So I'm going to go watch both parts, and we're going to count them as one episode, as we usually do. So I'll be back in about 44 minutes.